Bulvinaka and good evening everyone. Welcome to this Ministry of Economy press conference. This afternoon we will see the Attorney-General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications make several announcements in regards to government assistance in the area of cash assistance, outsourcing of general practitioners and outsourcing of household packs. I now call upon the Attorney-General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to make his announcement.
Thank you, Namaya. Ladies and gentlemen, as was announced some weeks back, we had said that there are a number of services that actually would be outsourced to the private sector, and we would like to today announce those services and who indeed they have gone to. As you know that we are currently giving food to at least 4,000 to 5,000 people who are in targeted lockdown areas or who are in home isolation. And so government has a responsibility to provide not just groceries, but also some household items to them, household essential items to them. We had put out expressions of interest with the private sector. We had 19 applications from various businesses, including supermarkets and various other businesses that wanted to participate in this particular provision of a private sector participation in the provision of food and basic supplies. We have selected two. The two businesses are New World and Shop and Save. Shop and Save's staff will be delivering the food, has already completed their training with the Ministry of Health in respect of the various health protocols. In fact, today they were out on a run, learning run in Ngawiya settlement. There's about 542 homes that are being delivered with food today. In fact, probably would have been completed by now. And they will then essentially take over those deliveries completely together with New World. They have been contracted to supply those household items and including groceries, both in the Lamy Nasori containment zone and also in the lockdown area in Nandi. Ladies and gentlemen, we expect obviously this to continue. We have so far expended nearly $2 million in the provision of these food items and household essentials. I would now like to read out to you essentially those items that will be put together as part of the package. And we have, of course, items that are going to be delivered once, and there are others that need to be provided on a continuous basis. So we have rice, we have flour, split peas, soybean oil, tin fish, mackerel, breakfast crackers, tea leaves, milk powder, sugar, onion, potatoes, garlic, washing soap, toothpaste, toilet papers, bathing soap, detergent powder, dishwashing paste, noodles, salt, curry powder, jam, soya sauce, sponge, steel wool, multi-purpose cleaner, yeast, tang, baking powder, baked beans, tomato sauce, tin mutton, self-rising flour, some cookies, matches box, mosquito coil. And then of course we have things like diapers that not every household will require, but they'll be delivered too. And it's not just only diapers for babies, some households require adult diapers, sanitary pads. We have milk formula as and when required by the particular household. We have 1 round of a crushed chicken soup pack. And then we have items that we've said to the supermarkets they must buy from NMA to be part of this package, which includes cassava, dalo, or bhindi, or okra, or ladyfinger, chorea, and bele. So these are the items that will be delivered, and of course, depending on the size of the family, they will receive 1 or 2 packs, and they will be delivered over the 14 days. The idea of outsourcing, of course, is to create efficiency. The idea is to ensure also that we do not have key resources, in particular from the medical field, who are tied up in delivering of these food items. It can be done very well by the private sector. They have been engaged. They obviously now understand the protocols. And of course, they will then go in, be able to perpetuate or inform the rest of the members of the public the kind of protocols they actually are engaged in, which will create a culture of compliance. It will also lead to efficiencies in the contract. We have also said to them that they need to be able to provide these services on a very short-term basis, or indeed at short notices. So they may be, for example, if an area needs to go on a lockdown this evening, if people say we don't have anything, they can actually provide those items almost immediately. This, of course, frees up valuable resources from government, from Ministry of Health, and various other agencies to be able to focus on their core function. It also creates jobs in the private sector. It creates a lot more commerce in the private sector. So, for example, the Shop and Save and New World have gone out and hired new people and given them employment to be able to carry out these deliveries. So in that way, you are spreading the dollar to a lot more people than simply confining to those people who are already getting paid, and they already would probably be under a lot of strain and pressure and stress. And in this way, we are able to ensure that the efficiency and the efficacy of this distribution is carried out well. The other outsourcing engagement, and please feel free to ask me questions at the end of this, the other outsourcing engagement that we have finalized and we now have contracts, which is also very exciting, is the outsourcing as announced by Dr. Fong some time back and the Honorable Prime Minister about the engagement of private doctors to provide medical services in the communities. As you know, the public health system, because of the COVID cases that we've had, or the inability of people perhaps to travel for long distances and to go to doctors near their own location, we had decided to outsource. Initially, when we had called for expressions of interest, Nandi and Lotoka were in a lockdown area. They're no longer in a lockdown area, but you've got targeted lockdown area, which is Namaka at the moment. Nonetheless, we've gone ahead with this because it puts less pressure on the doctors in the public health system. And this service is available for those people who normally would go to, say, a health center or a public hospital, because they cannot normally afford to pay the cost of a private doctor. So they would go to a health center, or go to a Nandi public hospital or Lotoka public hospital. So we had called for expressions of interest. It was very interesting in terms of some of the responses we received and the dynamics at play behind it, which I can elaborate on further if required. But in short, we had 24 different practices or GP companies that actually applied. We have selected 17 outlets in Ba, in Lotoka, in Nandi, and there are some in the Suvarnasori corridor that have also been as approved service providers. Essentially what this means is that if you have been seeing doctors, if you have a flu or if you've got some ailment, you had a cut that you want a dressing put on, you can actually go to these GPs and get those services provided by them. You don't actually have to pay any fees. The government will actually pay your fees for you. Now, of course, those people who already have been the patients or clients of these GPs won't be eligible for this, because they already could afford to go and see a private doctor. But this is for those people who could not or would not normally go to a private institution. They would go to a public institution. They can now go to these GPs. We have also, in a very exciting arrangement also, you know that Fiji Care provides insurance services to the Fijian government in terms of, we've got an insurance policy for those who receive poverty alleviation benefits, or social welfare scheme as commonly known, and we had it for civil servants where they provide micro insurance, they provide it for farmers, etc. So Fiji Care, and we really appreciate what they have done. They have, because they're also in the area of providing services, insurance services for medical purposes, they have agreed to provide the oversight for us. So they'll be the ones who will be doing the reconciliation with the GPs. They'll be the ones liaising with the GPs to see how many patients they have seen, the verification of that, because they have the expertise in that area, and then they will provide for us for disbursement of those fees that need to be paid to these GPs. And they have agreed to do it for free, as part of the corporate social responsibility for the next 1 year, which is great. They have also agreed to develop a software, so there's less bureaucracy, less paperwork, and the GPs will be able to then very quickly upload the information for disbursements of funds, and government will then be able to very quickly disburse those funds to them. These services, given there's a little bit of work to be done in terms of the logistics, will be available from next week, Monday. And the GPs, or the medical centers that actually have been selected, and a lot of it was to do with their availability to provide those services and the costings and the pricing that they charge. Some of them had quoted extremely high prices, and when we found out that some of them weren't even charging those fees under normal circumstances, but perhaps when government called for expression of interest, they only charge a higher rate. So in Waimanu Road, we have Dr. Netani Philip Koroi from Koroi Surgery. He's one of the selected GPs. The Makoi Health Center, which is in Wunindongo Street, Makoi Nosinu, ground floor, lot 2. Dr. Lalita Devi, Dr. Keshun Nadan, Dr. Tisha Prasad. Bay Health Clinic, which is 193 Rodwell Road, Bailey House, Suva. Dr. Sarika Chandra. In lot 40, FNTC Road, Narere. Sen's Medical Center, which is Dr. Shanita Sen. In 10 Luke Street, Nambua, OMS Medical Center Pte Limited, Dr. Om Prasad. We have in Garase Street, Nandera Nasinu, lot 67, Rubina Medical Clinic and Research Center Pte Limited, Dr. Roy Farrells and Dr. Muhammad Ali. In Foster Road, Walubay, Suva, Pacific Specialist Healthcare Pte Limited, which is the following doctors: Dr. Basharat Munshi, Dr. Senson Fausanga, Dr. Voi Solomone, Dr. Gurpreet Kaur. In Nandi, Health Masters Pte Limited, which is Lot 2, Shop 2, Bulawai Subdivision, Watulevu, Nandi, Dr. Ahmed Sharif, Dr. Shudishka Singh, Ace Medical Clinic, in Jet Point Complex, Matintar, Dr. Kana Gounder and Dr. Nahina Naz. Lot 3, Sagayam Road, Nandi, Coastal Medical Investments Pte Limited. Dr. Naidu's medical center is Dr. Ashank Naidu, Dr. Komal Singh. Family Medical Clinic, again in Nandi, in Sagayam Road, 69 Sagayam Road, Nandi, Dr. Saras Nadan. Zen's Medical Center Limited, Dr. Zen Low, Dr. Zen Min Low, Dr. Ravinesh Gounder, Dr. Sailasa Misi, Dr. Alexander Kanan, Dr. Ryan Shankar, Dr. Keleli Nadhika, Dr. Carolini Batamba, Dr. Tupo Rangona. In Lotoka, we have only one provider, which is again Zen's Medical Center in Lotoka, 15 Rasa Avenue, corner of Nadula Street, Lotoka, Dr. Arnold Sami and Dr. Agnes Boyd. In Ba, we have Dr. Singh's Medical Center, which is 10 Bank Street, Ba, Dr. Diva Singh. Next is Al Shifa Medical Center, 3 Baturu Street, Yalalevu, Ba, Dr. Muhammaduddin. 16 Puritan Medical Center, corner of Bank Road, Ganga Street, Ba, Dr. Ashna Rafiq. And Zen's Medical Center in Ba, Dr. Priyanka Chandra, which is opposite Westpac, besides WellCare Clinic in Ba. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank very much these GPs for coming forward and providing these services. A lot of them are quite passionate in respect of providing the services. Obviously, they'll be paid for these services. The prices, of course, range depending on which location or which town they're in, but we obviously wanted to ensure that there's proper commensuration for them. We'll be putting up all this information on the Fijian government Facebook page. The details of all these doctors will go up within the next 1 hour or so. So those people who are listening in or who will go to the Facebook page, if you want to use their services and if you normally go to a public health outlet, you can visit these doctors and they can provide those services to you. Similarly, the list of food items, etc., that we'll be providing will also go on the government Facebook page. Now, the other announcement that we'd like to make is that, as you know, that the government has been, as also announced previously, providing a number of incentives over a period of time, in fact, since July of last year, for unemployment benefits. And we had what we call the FNPF Unemployment Benefit Scheme, where government was funneling money through the FNPF accounts into members' accounts. There were people who were receiving $220 a fortnight. Some have received, about 8,000 of them received about $5,000 paid directly by government since last year. And they could withdraw $220 a fortnight from the general account. If the funds were exhausted, then government would actually top it up. Similarly, those people who had reduced hours, they could also withdraw funds from the general account. If that was exhausted, then government would top it up. To date, government has topped up $183 million into their accounts for disbursement for them as unemployment benefits. FNPF has allowed the withdrawal of $170 million. So in total, about $353 million have been disbursed or has been disbursed since last year, July, in respect of this payment. We have, of course, at the same time, provided the $90 and the $50 benefits to those people in the informal sector. When we initially disbursed $90, in the total value of that was about $10.6 million, where 150,000 people had applied and 118,000 people actually got the $90. Then subsequently we then issued the $50 scheme, where 280,000 people applied. Some, of course, were trying to double dip. 224,000 people were able to meet the criteria, and they have we disbursed under that system $11.2 million. We, of course, have been wanting to extend this particular unemployment benefit, as we said, in particular to the informal sector, who generally previously we used to get missed out from these types of government schemes. But we've been very mindful of that on the back of course, the $30 million that was disbursed to micro, small, medium enterprises. We are today announcing that there'll be another round of $50 disbursement. We are announcing it today because we would like people to have all the right details. So please get your TIN number if you don't have it. Please ensure you have the right date of birth. You have your voter ID card, your BRN number or birth registration number. The applications for that will open on the 30th of June, so approximately we are giving about 5 to 7 days to get all your details together. It'll open on the 30th of June at 9 a.m. It will close on the 2nd of July at 5 p.m. and then the funds will be disbursed in the following week at the latest by 7th of July. We expect, given the fact that the unemployment benefit scheme of 220 and the reduced hours benefits, of course, will come to an end in the month of July because the year is ending. So we expect those people whose benefits would stop would also apply for this $50. The new budget, of course, will take care of any further unemployment benefits that we'll announce as a policy. So all in all, we've already disbursed $11.2 million to the informal sector, $10.6 million subsequently previously under the $90 scheme, and of course the $30 million. We have, of course, in terms of the costings of what I've just announced, as I mentioned about the food distribution, in close to 40,000 packs have been distributed at $2 million. The outsourcing of the household packs, including the number of people that are now in home isolation, we expect in the near future will cost approximately about $5 million. And we believe that we obviously have to do this because we need to have people in isolation. We don't want them to get frustrated and leave the isolation points. And the outsourcing of the GPs will, of course, we are envisaging about $5 million in the short to medium term will cost us. But again, these services are being provided because it brings about efficiency. It puts less strain on our medical frontline people who actually have, sometimes triple responsibilities to adhere to. In this way, they'll be freed up. They'll also be able to ensure that they have more focused attention on the key areas. We also are then creating, commercial and economic activity in the private sector. So, ladies and gentlemen, they are the announcements that we are making here this evening, and please feel free to ask any questions. The other day, somebody had asked me, how much money actually have we paid for quarantine facilities? Approximately $15 million has been disbursed to hotels and motels where, since COVID-19 has taken place, where we've been paying for quarantine facilities. Fijians are generally very lucky because they have not had to pay for their quarantine facilities. Now, of course, if people go for holidays and they come back, as we saw last year, a lot of them, they essentially were paid for by government. They'll have to pay for that. But many people who return from medical, procedures offshore, when they come in, the quarantine facility payments are actually taken care of by government. So we disbursed already about $15 million in that space. As I've said, in respect of the future unemployment benefits and having a social safety net, these will be announced in the budget to ensure that we don't leave any Fijian behind. So let's open the floor for any questions that you may have.
So, Bulumanaka, Edwin from FPC News. With regards to the outsourcing of the food rations, what we are seeing over the last few days is an expanding number of people testing positive and expanding number of communities testing positive. Looking at the long term and the need for the government to continue to provide these rations, in the long term, how sustainable is it for the government given the limited resources and the current economic situation? How long would you be able to continue to provide these rations? And looking at the issue of providing medical services, naturally 17, as you announced, would not be enough to cater for what could be more people turning up to these GPs. Is the tender still open for more GPs to enter?
The first question last. Of course, the cost of providing groceries and essential medical services is important, and we need to do that. Because what is the option? If you don't do it, then people won't stay in isolation, and that can create even greater economic havoc. So this is, part and parcel of the new norm. That's what a lot of countries are doing. They provide, essential services that they probably previously did not do, or in fact did not do. So this is part and parcel of our ongoing costs. As we said, that there are certain operational costs will now become a feature of forward budgets for us. So that has to be done, because if you don't feed people, how will they live? They need food, and we need to provide them. They're actually staying in home isolation because we've asked them to do that. So there'll be a much bigger detrimental impact if you have people outside, not in home isolation. So we have to take care of that. And at the end of the day, in fact, it's far more efficient to do that, because at the moment when we have, for example, civil servants or members of the security forces deliver those foods, it takes up their time. They're already being paid, but then we have to commandeer government vehicles, we have to commandeer other facilities and equipment, etc., to do the delivery. And we're also exposing them to wide risk. In this way, there's no commandeering done. The vehicles can actually stay with the respective ministries. These people already have been trained, and then therefore it creates a lot more efficiency. And then because they've been trained, we are able to then ensure that there's no spread of the virus itself, because they're following all the protocols. Can you please just thank you.
Thank you. Shanil here from Fiji Village. Sir, can you reveal with regards to hiring of the GPs, how much government will be spending on this?
I've just said we are envisaging $5 million at this point in time. Of course, it depends what the uptake is. It doesn't mean $5 million will be spent tomorrow. We'll be starting on Monday, so obviously it'll be over a period of time. But we are, in our sort of assessment, allocating $5 million.
So there have been reports on the ABC about fights, brawls starting over food. Is the government concerned about such wrong reports being filed to overseas media?
Well, these things aren't worth commenting on. As you know that those reports, unfortunately, I have to say, are being, fire fanned by people in Fiji who simply are misrepresenting facts. We all know that that was not a social unrest in Fiji because of food. Of course, some politicians have tried to make it out to be, but we know that's not the reality. It's not worth commenting on. This is what happens when you have kind of desktop journalism taking place from offshore, what we call parachute journalists. In this case, they're not parachuting, but they're desktopping from there. But unfortunately, fed misinformation for political reasons or whatever by people from Fiji. But it is quite silly to suggest that, and I would not pay any attention to it either. And nor would I pay any attention to those people, Fijians who are spreading misinformation just to probably get appearance on ABC Australia.
So what are some other initiatives being undertaken by the government to ensure that there's economic activity, even in small, informal, little set of businesses such as barber shops or retail outlets?
Well, as you know that the barber shops are now functioning. We've got now various protocols in place that are rolled out by MCTTT. Today we were talking to a couple of the companies, NMC-TTT, about how there will be also, the phone answering. They'll be outsourcing that so they get greater efficiency rather than the staff doing that. They'll be attending more at the back end. And of course, they have a lot more professionals will be answering those phone calls. But please wait for the budget, because obviously we have been meeting a number of stakeholders, as you would have seen on the news on the government Facebook page. We've been meeting with a number of stakeholders, including large companies. We met with the micro, small, medium enterprise group. There's about 300-400 members in that group. We met up with them, and they discussed what were the challenges they were facing, what they would like to see. We met with banks. We met with, we're meeting up with the Insurance Council and various other organizations that we have been met up with, and to actually assess what are the challenges they have. We of course have some ideas in respect of how to spur or rejuvenate, we should say, some of the economic activity. But in all of this, what is really critical is, as Dr. James Fong has said, as our Prime Minister has said, get vaccinated. It is critically important that people get vaccinated, and by vaccination we mean they need to get 2 doses, because that will allow for a lot more economic activity, a lot less restrictions in terms of the medical protocols or COVID-safe protocols that have been put in place. And indeed, if we achieve the herd immunity, then we'll be able to make a better case with our major market tourism sources to say, you can come to Fiji and it's safe to travel to Fiji. And indeed, I'm sure that their governments would also be able to say to their citizens, because Fiji has achieved herd immunity by getting X percentage of the adult population vaccinated, you can go there. And that, of course, will mean a lot more economic activity. So it's critically important that all of you, we've met your media organizations, the CEOs of your media organizations, most of the media organizations here. We met with the CEOs today, and that's one of the things we've emphasized to them. It is also important that you, some of you are well-known journalists, some of you look very good on a Facebook page and a video. Please go out and, and as a talking head, tell people how important it is to get vaccinated, because sometimes people need to see those who they can relate to or they know from their profession, and then the penny will actually drop. So they need to. So if we all get vaccinated, achieve herd immunity, it'll open up a lot more opportunities.
Sir Eparama from Fiji One News. Considering that we have had a lot of double dipping on our first $50 assistance, even though we have the government ministry has had a strategy in place, what plan is the ministry doing for the second $50 assistance?
Sure. Just to give further information, as we said that with the $90, 150,000 people applied, but 118,000 actually qualified. So some were trying to double dip. So we were able to sieve that out. One or two may have crept through, but overall we are able to identify those who were double dipping. In the $50, the 280,000 actually had applied, but 224,000 actually qualified. So they were able to see through that. The team from Ministry of Economy working together with Vodafone and FNPF were able to sieve through that. It's interesting, and let me tell you a story. One of the gentlemen who had applied complained and sent text messages to us and said, look, I have not got my $50 yet. When the team at Ministry of Economy tried to ascertain from Vodafone as to why the $50 was not disbursed, they said, well, we could not disburse it because in his M-Pesa account he's already got $10,000. And that's the maximum you can have in M-Pesa account. So there are people like that. Those checks and balances do actually help us to verify, who are the people who are eligible. And there are people eligible. Of course, we expect the numbers to increase because of the completion of the unemployment benefit that we had through phase 2 and 3 in FNPF. And as I said, we'll need to wait for the announcement in the budget to see what new form of assistance we'll provide in terms of unemployment benefit or assistance to those in the formal and the informal sector. But as we've seen with the, for example, things like barber shops opening, some of the small businesses opening, with the protocols being put in place by NMC-TTT, working in conjunction with the Ministry of Health, a lot more people are getting back to work, which is very critical. A lot more people are taking heed of the protocols, and we hope that a lot more people continue to do that, because we obviously need to increase our level of compliance.
Sir Rakesh from Fiji Times, you have mentioned about private GPs who will be providing services on government cost. So are there FNU medical students also recruited to provide services?
They're students, they can't provide those services because they're not qualified doctors.
So just in reference to how you mentioned that vaccination is vital, we have, through the efforts of the Health Ministry, reached about 45% of the population, which is in itself quite remarkable. But there is still a portion of the population who aren't getting vaccinated simply because they have fears. Some are afraid of the needle, some because of their religious beliefs, and a host of reasons. We've had the Prime Minister come out and speak about vaccination. We have Dr. Fong and his team consistently talking about vaccination. But for the economy to recover and how the vaccination and the economy are tied together, what are your hopes and what are your projections in the mid to long term?
You know, in the meetings we've been having back to back, starting, you know, every morning from 9 till about 5 p.m. every day since last week, meeting all the different stakeholders. One thing that we have said as a common theme to all of them, we said, please go out, make a short video of yourselves and put it up on Facebook. We are willing to push it through the government Facebook page. There are people in the tourism sector, for example. You know, if a tourism operator, say, you know, the president of the Fiji Tourism and Hotel Association is the owner of Plantation Island. Now, if he comes out on Facebook on a video with a talking head and says, you know, I want to open on my resort, if we all get vaccinated, we'll be able to open up our doors once again to tourists. So the people from Malolo, because this resort is in Malolo Lailai, they may say, hey, you know, I know Brian, and I used to sell fish to Brian. And I used to sell various other produce to Plantation Island. Now, if he's saying that we need to get vaccinated, only then he can open, we better get vaccinated too. Or if you have a sports personality saying that, you may have a following, Edwin. People may like watching you read the news. If you come out and say that, then they'll say, oh, Edwin is saying that, you know, I can identify with that, and let's go and get vaccinated. So sometimes, you know, we have people from the different sectors, sectors of the economy or different communities where people can identify with them, and their messaging will actually help the penny to drop. There are a lot of people, maybe, not a lot, there are some people who may be fence sitters, some are just frightened to get a needle in their arm. You know, the way that some of the pictures come across, it looks a bit frightening. But if you just give them the nudge, then of course they will hopefully get them vaccinated. And it's critically important. I think it would be a shame that if we fall short of the herd immunity numbers. And it's critically important, therefore, for all of us. It's a national effort. All of you need to go out and do that.
So with the government trying to achieve herd immunity, which is good for everyone, is government looking at legislating vaccination, making it compulsory?
No, there is, as said in Parliament, that you have a constitutional right to refuse a medical treatment or medical procedure. That's your right. But obviously there could be consequences from you exercising that right. So if your employer says that you cannot work here if you don't get vaccinated, then you've chosen not to get vaccinated, but you cannot then work there. So, you know, obviously it's a people's choice, but people also need to understand, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily get that if we don't achieve that number that we're supposed to, as advised by Ministry of Health, then, you know, we will continue to bleed. And it's a very easy thing to achieve. And the world is going that way. This is the new norm. If we get vaccinated, we can go back to our lives, you know, in the form that would be, you know, will replicate somewhat similar to what we had prior to COVID-19. We need to bring this to an end soon.
So last question from me. In recent times, we've seen a lot of people painting a picture of Fiji as if it's heading to the dark ages or it's all doom and gloom. You see a lot of this on social media, a lot of leading figures as well questioning whether the government has a grasp of what's happening on the ground. For you as Minister for Economy and for your team working behind the scenes to keep the economy churning, where are we right now as a country, and what's the projection for the future? Is it all doom and gloom?
So what do you mean, where are we right now?
Well, the country...
In South Pacific.
No, I mean, the country, I think you understand the context of the question.
No, I mean, where we are right now, vis-a-vis the preparation of the budget, we obviously cannot be distracted by people who wanting to make destructive noises. We have to focus on the job at hand. There's a lot of people who, as we've said previously, who are, wanting to engage in populist politics or wanting to have, instant gratification here and now, as opposed to taking a long-term view. If you look at most countries throughout, throughout history, countries that have faced any crisis, whether it's wars, whether it's economic, downturn or medical issues or pandemics, etc., those countries that have had a long-term focus and have a stable approach to policy development are the ones who actually do well coming out of it. So that's really the focus. The team is here, and that's what we focus on. We are meeting all sorts of stakeholders, and they appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that they're able to give their feedback. And they themselves, in fact, every single group that we have met are focused on the future. And they want to get out this, the rut, if you like. But at the moment, as you've seen, is that there has been a lot of positive changes that have taken place. And a lot of people, for example, who make various suggestions that are really not, does not have any credibility at all. So, we don't want to focus on that. We obviously want to be realistic about what is happening. Now, Dr. James Fong is going to give his statement very soon. Please listen to what he's saying in terms of the health side of things. At the moment, we're obviously liaising with them in terms of what are their requirements, the budgetary allocation, and of course meeting all the other stakeholders, because for us what is really critically important is highlighted by somebody is to provide sustained livelihoods, to ensure that people don't miss out from the social safety net that we are putting in place. Unfortunately, many NGOs are making very large political statements, absolutely no clue in terms of the economic realities, both internationally and domestically, and what are the implications of some of the things that they do say. So we don't get distracted by that. We have to be focused. And, we met different groups today. We met the Law Society Institute of Accountants, some of the blue chip companies, Fijian Holdings, various other large family-owned companies. We've met with the, like we said, the NGO, civil society groups. We met with the FRA, LTA, BAF. We met with, WAF, all these different organizations and people from the private sector. We're also meeting continuously tomorrow, next week also. So we're getting a good sense of what people are feeling. There are a lot of these people are large-scale employers. We met with the BPO Council. We met with the garment factory, industry. We met with the banks, Association of Banks. We're meeting them again next week. We're going to meet with the, finance companies, etc. A lot of people are, have issues with finance companies or banks. How can we find some form of, resolution for them? So those are the things that we are focused on. How can we create more employment? There's obviously a lot of opportunities in the digital space. A lot more people are using digital equipment. There's a demand for, getting rid of duties altogether on sophisticated digital equipment, which we're very much open to. Those are the kind of things that we're looking at to pre-position ourselves, because God willing, we get vaccinated, reach the right amounts, then obviously the economy will open up, and we need to be in the right place to be able to take advantage of it and create, sustained livelihoods. Okay, Naka, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, this now concludes our press conference. Good evening and thank you very much.